Hello, welcome to the One Life Church devotional series where we cover the entire Bible in 20 months. Well, today's chapters are Job chapter 7 and John chapter 9. And in John 9, we find a man who was born blind. And the disciples see him and say to Jesus, that man born blind, was it because of his parents' sin or because of his own sin that he's blind? And Jesus said, it wasn't either of their sin. But God is going to be glorified as this man is healed. And so he goes up to him and he spits in the ground, takes the mud, he puts it in his eyes, and he says to him, go to the pool of Siloam and wash it off. And, so he washes it off and suddenly he can see. And so his neighbors say, isn't this the guy that used to beg? This is our neighbor. And some said, no, he just looks like him. Anyway, he kept protesting, no, I am the guy. Anyway, the Pharisees called him because they'd heard of this miracle and said to him, who healed you? He said, well, I actually don't know who healed me. Well, the disciples have been with Jesus, and this had taken place on the Sabbath. And so the Pharisees say, well, he couldn't have been from God because he sins by breaking the Sabbath. And others would then say, well, how can a sinner perform a miracle like this? So they were divided about these things. And then they called the guy's parents, and you see, this really perplexed them in a big way. And the parents were a little bit edgy because they had been told, if you admit that he is the Messiah, you're going to be kicked out of the temple. So they said, well, we don't know how he was healed, but we know this kid of ours was born blind. And, ask him now because he's of age. He can answer himself. And so they call him back another time. And they say to him, tell us the truth now. Glorify God in telling the truth. He replied, whether he's a sinner or not, whether Jesus is a sinner or not, I don't know. The one thing I do know is I was blind and now I see. And they said, well, this guy couldn't have been from God. And so, we know Moses because Moses spoke to us. But this fellow, we don't even know where he's come from. And then the guy gets a little bit shirty with him and says, you don't even know where he came from. And yet he healed me. Nobody has ever heard of opening the eyes of a blind person. Verse 33, if this man were not from God, he could do nothing. They got really uptight with him. Anyway, so they kick him out. And Jesus finds him again, knowing that the man he's healed has been ostracized by the spiritual leaders. And so Jesus asks him, do you believe in the Son of Man? He says, well, who is the Son of Man? And he says, you're looking at him. In fact, you're talking to him right now. And so he says, Lord, I believe. And he worshipped him. And then Jesus basically, in the hearing of some Pharisees, said to them, listen, I've come to give the blind sight. Those who think they can see, well, they're going to be blinded by me. And, other times he called them blind guides. He said, you blind guides, you're leading people into a pit. Anyway, so that's John chapter 9. When we go to Job 7, Job is now finished talking to his friend who had tried to counsel him with no joy. And then he sort of turns his attention to the Lord again. And he's moaning his lot in life, saying, my life is just like hard labor. I come home, I think I'm going to get respite in bed. I'm not going to get in bed. And I look at myself. And my body is clothed with scabs and worms are eating my flesh. It's festering, it's blistering. It's just like a horrific picture. And then he says, I will complain. My soul will just complain. I despise life. I don't want to live much longer. Let me alone. My days have no meaning. And then he sort of turns to the Lord and he says, why are you testing me like this? If I've sinned, please forgive me. And, so what we see is a man in a lot of pain, wrestling through. And as we go through the rest of the book of Job, we're going to see how he comes out the other side. I love this about the Bible, that the Bible doesn't hide the fact that we go through tough times. The Bible doesn't hide the fact that some of us are sick and some of us are blind. But God, in the New Testament verse today, God is there to be glorified, to bring healing. In Job, we're going to see it by the time the book of Job is over. and Job has gone through his testing and his tough time, God is going to be glorified there too.